Hi, we are going to look at how the vaccines against COVID virus works. So the COVID virus is a coronavirus, and these coronaviruses, few examples are SARS and the COVID-19, right? So they look like that, we all know that. And then what's the specifics about this one is here they have this spike proteins. That's the target one, is spike proteins, or simply proteins, we all know that. And then what's the other one is they do have this genome and they have mRNA. So number two target would be mRNA. So those are the two targets. Let's say how this thing should work. And here you have a 3D COVID-19 coronavirus. If you take a cross section A to A, and it should look like this. And again, you can see the spike protein, and which is our target 1. And this is the other one, target 2, which is the mRNA. And this one, actually you need not the whole genome, you need only 15 units of it, and that's good enough to make a good vaccine. So now how does it work? So let's look at first how we get infected and get sick. Here we have a healthy person, right? And this healthy person's lungs normally functions with these air sacs, right? So what can happen if we breathe in a virus? So the virus goes through the mouth and nose mostly, and it goes through the trachea, goes down, goes to the lungs, and then the lungs get infected, right? Let's see how things work here. So these are the if you look at, so this is one alveoli, one cell actually. So this is one cell. So this is the simple cell, and inside the nucleus, and there's a lot of things happening, but this is the membrane. So this is like the fence of it, right? So what happens here, they do have these receptor proteins, and these are just like antennas or like a guard post. So that it protects the cell from the membrane, and this is like an antenna. So what happens here, when we get the virus into the alveoli, into the airways, and it's going to detect here, and it checks the ID, and it figures out, okay, this is the right host. It goes into the cell and invade the cell, and then that destroys the alveolar cells, and that's how we get the trouble. And when we get sick, the gas exchange don't work, so people need to be treated with oxygen and so on, then eventually infection. So this is the infected cell, and let's see how do we stop that, right? So that's the easiest way. Basically we are trying to stop the enemy at the gate, right? Okay, now here, so this is a, let's say this is a sick person infected, and his droplets and saliva and what he touches like doorknobs can infect the other person who is a healthy person here, right? And we know we have been using PPE and distancing, and those things helpful, very helpful, but it will not completely protect us from the sickness, right? So the vaccine comes into action here. So if we do have a vaccine, one way to do is this. If we have a block here, so this antenna, the receptor, and will not recognize this one, so that way we stop the virus entering the cell. So we stop the enemy at the gate. So that's one of the best ways to do it, right? So we will not get infected if we have this recombinant protein. So that's what the first type of vaccine we're going to talk about. So let's see in detail. So here is the COVID virus, and then these are the spike proteins as we talked about. So these proteins do encode into DNA, right? And so we can just prepare these proteins in the test tubes, right? And these proteins can be injected, right? Or we can also produce DNA, and in the test tube we can make mRNA, and we can also produce the protein. So the protein goes into the body, right? And then it produces these little pieces of protein, and these are basically fake virus proteins, right? They are not real viruses, so we are not really infected by the bad virus. We do have inside our body after the vaccine that these proteins, so these are called antigens. So the antigens are the sign that saying to the body that there is an invasion coming up, right? So what happens? The body's immune system start to work, and it produces these ones. These are called the antibodies. So the antibodies are our proteins, our self proteins, and these are just to fight back these antigens, right? So the proteins are produced to fight back the antigens. Now, so we produce these ones in the body in the millions. These are in the millions. The more, the better. So the more the time, it will make more and more, right? Now these viruses coming into the body, and they come into the body, right? So what happens now? These antibodies go and bind to the virus, and it neutralizes the virus. So no more infection, right? That's how it should work. So that's the first type of virus. And so the companies like AstraZeneca is producing this protein. So this type of protein type of virus, right? And this can be stored in the room temperature, normal temperature. And so what's the news was saying that this will be distributed to the African continent and Asia and South America most probably, because they are warmer countries, and so this drug will work much better for those areas in the world, right? Okay, so let's look at the other one. So the other one is we also can take these parts of the genome out, that's the mRNA, or we can actually do this DNA encoded back to mRNA. So either way, we can produce this mRNA in a test tube in a good laboratory. And so Moderna and Pfizer, so they produce this type of drug, right? So they produce this one, but only sort of negative thing, not a negative thing, it only sort of challenge is this should be stored in a negative 70 Celsius and so on, very cold temperature. So that's why mostly the North American and European countries are ready to take this medication, right? This vaccine, right? So the vaccine goes in, and from that one it produces mRNA, becomes DNA, and it converts to DNA, and it converts into proteins in the cell. So we produce this one after the injection, right? And now these proteins are again appearing. These are the antigens, and then the body's immune system start to produce the antibodies. So they produce here in the millions, and then again the infection takes place. They come into the body through the airways, and then what happens? The antibodies go and bind and neutralize the virus. So no more infection again, right? So that's how you stop the infection. So those are the two drugs. And what's the important thing? They're slightly different mechanisms they do, but they will provide the protection, right? Okay. Now, so there was another question asked about what is the herd immunity. So what's the herd immunity is this one. So this is a big population, let's say in a country. So if we vaccine 65 to 70% of the population, so that's why I put check marks. All these people are vaccinated, right? Majority. So let's say we all got vaccinated, then we have the herd immunity. If we do have the herd immunity, this is what can happen. So let's say the virus actually can hide and stay somewhere other parts of the world. Let's say this person travels and get infected, and what happens is only this person will get infected, right? And so it will not go to this person, this person, this person, and this person, right? So we are mostly protected. And let's say this one, let's say this is a family, so let's say this child got infected, right? What happens there? Let's say here's the mom and dad, they will get infected too, but not the rest of the population. So what's the good news about the herd immunization or herd immunity actually? And so we won't run out of hospital beds and the facilities, and there will be enough doctors and nurses to treat us, right? Okay, now the last question I was asked about what are the other type of viruses. These are few examples. So the MMR, so after the after Jenner's experiment for the first vaccine started, and then now we know it's a type of MMR is a popular vaccine we know, and Ebola has a different type of vaccine for the last few years we know, and normal flu vaccine and the polio vaccine actually basically killed viruses we put into the body, right? And then Hep B is a different type. So these are few types that we were talking about, the mRNA virus, and we talked about the protein vaccine, right? And then there is a possibility of making DNA vaccine as well. So that's about the types of vaccines. The last question, and if you're interested how the immune system works, is this way. So the immune system, to me, it's more like protecting a country, like the forces of a country. So let's say these are the foot soldiers here, right? This is called the macrophage in the immune system. This is basically our army, right? And then army detects these antigens which came from the virus, right, or from the enemy, right? And then it is detected and coded and then given or communicated into the other side, right? So this is something like a base, right? And the command. So the base and the command takes this information that there is an enemy invading the country, right? It gives into the other specific forces. Let's say these are like snipers, and let's say commandos and that type of forces. They are very specific, right? So they have special guns and tactical weapons and those things, antibodies, right? And also they have the tanks and, you know, more destructive weaponry, right? So those are the ones, the cytotoxic T cells. So that's how the immune system actually works. So it detects the antigen and transfer the information into the other cells and helper T cells and the memory B cells, right? And they produce in the millions these antibodies, right? And sometimes we heard about the booster dose, because if we have a diminished memory about the antibody production, and the booster dose is needed, right? Okay, so that's how things work. If you have any comments, please leave a comment, and I want to say thank you.